Greetings, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Live from Cleveland this evening. Very excited because I have a wonderful presentation for you this evening from Fern Enley, a Cleveland expat who moved to Bristol sometime a couple years ago and just released a brand new EP called Acute. He will tell you a little bit more about his journey next in this really wonderfully narrated story. And, I really love being able to do these live from Cleveland's from anywhere in the world, anywhere in the country, because otherwise we really would have never been able to capture this story exactly the way that Fern presents it. And they really made a huge effort to record their story, what's been happening since they were last in Cleveland and now moving overseas, and telling that story as well as kind of what predated releasing this EP on September 1st of this year. So a very brand new EP that is out. You can listen to it at Fern Enley, that's FERNENLEY.bandcamp.com. He will explain a little bit more about the album in the next few moments, and then at the very end of the show this evening, we will listen to all 3 songs on the EP. Please stay tuned. It is such an interesting story and really gives a great perspective from across the pond and another side of the world, also an area that they are experiencing this global pandemic. Stay tuned. This is live from Cleveland here at WRUW-FM 91.1.
Bonjour Cleveland, ici Fern Enley, et tu me manques beaucoup. Aujourd'hui, je te dis l'histoire à mon nouvel épée, Acute. Good evening, Cleveland. This is Fern Enley, and I miss you a lot. Today, I will tell you the story of my new EP, Acute. I find this EP to be rather unique because most EPs take the format of an artist writing of their past experiences and pain. And while that is definitely true, what is more relevant in this EP is this kind of premonition of the pain that I was about to endure. Those of you who know me know my impulsive nature, and my tendency is to kind of take any and every idea from its birth to the crazy unfurling of whatever that may be. I started recording Acute back last August. These songs had kind of solidified in the 3 years that I had been living back in Cleveland after my move back from the UK. The song Torch or Torch was actually written very shortly after I had moved back from my first time living in the UK. It's quite an anthem for me, as I really felt that this was kind of this continuation or another chapter of me just really stepping into my skin. Not to touch on such a far off history, but a small tangent is I feel as though I really didn't know myself when I first lived in the UK, and kind of stepping away from my partnership, meeting that friend group was the starting point, but I really needed Cleveland. I needed that time, and I needed that safe space to really understand and start really flourishing as the Fern I am today. So back in August 2020, it became evident that I really needed and wanted to pursue recording this EP. Welcome to Cleveland, where the pickings are high. I must have hit up, I don't know how many musicians in the area. I'm sure my acoustic demos are still pottering about in so many people's inboxes. But as good musicians and artists go, we know that there's no need to force things, and that we'll just wait for the right click and something organic to happen. Teaching started back up at School of Rock, and just luckily we had a new drum instructor, and that's James O'Connor, and we kind of shared this love of songwriting and lyrics, and when I showed him my songs, he was well happy to play drums on them, but also help me with kind of exploring some keys parts and other things, and it was a beautiful pairing. From there, I did what I do best, and that is lean into my community and my lovely friends around me. I asked my friend Randall Hoyle to kind of help me articulate these ideas and arrangements and put them solidly into a computer software and perform them, so I had working ideas and things that I could move around. Once that was sorted, I asked my good friend Komet Ojo to do some voice recording and production of the vocals, and we spent quite a fair amount of time before I left doing that. Now, the goal was to finish this EP before I left, but that became exceedingly impossible as I literally gave myself 6 weeks from the time I made the decision to the time I would depart to France. And there were so many back and forths about how I was going to finish the music, what was going to happen, and ultimately, Altimetry Music, or my great friend Bryce, I was able to, while I was on the road, kind of send them the waves every time I got my hands on a computer. I'll tell you, finishing an EP while you're homeless and sometimes you have equipment, sometimes you don't, is really dang hard. So on to the voyage, or the journey that this EP is about. It's funny, I've told this story so many ways and so many times, because as you're new to a place, people always ask, so what brought you here? Why Bristol? Why now? And it's different every time, because y'all know my love for storytelling. But really, when I think about it, it could come down quite simply to two things: serendipity and music. It goes without saying, but unfortunately must be said for the purpose of this story, and that is 2020 was just an awful year. That is the climate of the election, and obviously COVID hitting everybody, but definitely artists, and particularly myself and my band Frequence, who were planning to tour that year. I also can't say reading A Handmaid's Tale at the beginning of lockdown was my smartest idea. My fear of Trump getting reelected, paired with the inability to pursue myself as a creative human, with the infrastructure in America being so absolutely gutting, and the social system offering nothing at all for poor people, creative people, neurodivergent people, people who are definitely 1,000,000% contributing to our society, our government says do not deserve a decent life. And this rhetoric is nothing new. I mean, I spent my childhood in psychiatric units, psychiatric care, because I believe I knew people who dream, who love, who think critically, who empathize, people who are not bound by the constrictiveness and the suffocating nature of our disgusting society, will be told they are worth absolutely nothing. Now, this is critical to this EP and in general my writing, but I still haven't touched yet, and I would like to segue into this serendipity that I aforementioned. One day I was on the phone with my twin flame, Alyssa Boyd, and they mentioned to me that if the election went sour and Biden didn't win, that they possibly had an opportunity to move to France, as the family they were nannying for would move to France, and invited them to come along. I don't even think there was a split second between them saying the offer and myself being like, okay, well, I'm going to find a job. I have an Irish passport. Obviously, I'm going to move there. And even if I'm in a different part of the country, it'll be fine because I'll still write for Frequence. We'll get together. We'll travel a lot. It'll all be fine. I don't exactly remember if it happened within that conversation, but it dawned on me that the 3 songs that were on the upcoming EP were essentially the same word in French as they are in English. So you have fragile, fragile, diamond, diamant, and torch, torche. So now that serendipity and my disdain for the country are in line, all I had to do was come up with a quick plan and decide to move before or on, which I ended up moving on election day. Don't worry, kids, I did vote in advance. My first instinct was to get a job teaching, but I did not at all know French. So what do I know? The English language. I found a job where I would kind of be an au pair without the living situation, so almost babysitting. But that was in Paris or really any big city, but it is exorbitant to live there. And yes, just without the kind of bureaucratic knowledge, I was having trouble kind of finagling my way. So I needed to get clever and figure something else out. Back to that serendipity theme, I chose this program WRUW, which I was familiar with from before. It is Worldwide Organic Organization of Farming, and basically you kind of can choose a different profile. Usually it's 1 or 2 weeks at a time, but I found a particularly unique scenario that I decided to pursue. I just so happened to find a farm owner who was also going to be making a music studio in this beautiful old French house in this cave in the bottom of their house. They also had chickens and, well, theoretically had a vegetable farm. And yeah, it seemed perfect. It is hard to know what the best outcome of this whole situation has been, but I must say, in this high risk, high reward situation, farming, getting into soil, wow, do it yesterday, today, anytime, like get into that earth. Your body and mind will thank you, I promise. I mean, less than a year ago, I had never properly done anything agriculturally, and now I can't really fathom that not being a part of my life. Anyhow, when I first arrived on the farm, everything was magical and wonderful, and I just was filled with this childlike whimsy. Here I am, not actually being able to interact with the other adults, right? Because they can fluently speak French, and I can barely say I want water. So as I'm acclimating and they're getting used to just having a non-French speaker around, I'm just hanging out in the dirt and playing with the dog Shepherd. For all you Noonerspism or Spoonerism fans, that's actually a Spoonerism for perché, which means high as in stoned. Anyways, this was a very important time for growth in my empathetic way. I really felt for immigrants and children as I struggled to communicate myself fully. You lose your ability to advocate for yourself completely when you are so focused on just the mechanics of actually articulating small things like basic needs. How ever are you going to say deep sentiments and express your morals, hold your ground? This becomes very problematic when other adults can just trample over you because your lack of this. It is absolutely no wonder to me why our youth and undereducated people are the most vulnerable people we have. There are so many needs that are there. They are conscious of them, but this communication breakdown is unfortunately a huge detriment to their existence. I can't sympathize from other harsher circumstance, but my imagination and my empathy definitely connect to this bitter reality. as well as this was something that affected me quite a lot on my journey, and you will hear that throughout this. I consider myself to be quite an open person, poly, if you feel the need to categorize things, but I really like to express myself and openly and freely give love, and in an intimate sense as well. Within about a week, everyone on the farm expressed romantic interest in me, and so I did my best to communicate and give consent. So I became intimate with everybody living on the farm. So myself, the farmhand, the farm owner, and the farm owner's friend who was staying with us during lockdown. As good intimacy goes, it did start out consensually, which is great. And I thought, despite my inability to speak the language, and despite, especially for two of them who hardly spoke English at all, despite their lack of proficiency in English, that everything would be able to stay mutual and positive. And that was the case for the farmhand and the farm owner's friend, but unfortunately was not the case for the farm owner himself. Unfortunately, the farm owner got far too fascinated with me, and the real problem was when he verbatim told me, "I'm toxic and I need you to fix me." I think, and I hope for all the listeners out there, that's a big red flag. Toxicity is unfortunate, and it does reside within all of us. And if anyone claims to be not toxic, that should be a red flag too. We do all have it. We do all practice toxicity, unfortunately, and the goal should be reducing that with our own consciousness, introspection, and active efforts towards self-enlightenment. Now, I acknowledge this whole time, this whole journey, I did have the privilege, and probably will always have the privilege, to be able to lean on and come back to my friends and family in Cleveland. But as most of you know, I am painfully stubborn. And so that is exactly why my journey continued. I didn't know anyone in France. Well, saying that, we have the lovely B, who is in Paris, but it would have been a bigger burden, and living in Paris is tiny and small, and just too much was going on in their life, and you don't feed a fire with a fire. So I was forced to kind of go with what was available. The farmer's friend threw a party for a neighbor who was going to undergo surgery, and he decided to invite some people and kind of ask for me who might be willing to accommodate me. And here is where the homelessness and bouncing around starts to come in, and if I'm to break it down, it might get a little long and exhausting. It is very hard when you have to piece your life together again, accepting defeat and ultimately having to accept help from others. Because the harsh reality is, a lot of people give out of selfishness. They give to fill a void. They give to feel purpose, because often when these people give, they're not actually giving something that puts them out of their means in the first place. It is a very selfish way of giving. And unfortunately, when someone gives in this way, it breeds this expectation. And for me, that is a detriment to my existence, to have especially such intense expectations from someone with whom I'm living under. My next host had told me that I wasn't smiling enough anymore. Most of you know me and know my general disposition is quite sunny and warm. That is quite how I operate. But I am just human here, 100% authentically, truly human. And to expect me to always present that side of myself is not healthy and not realistic. So, major shocker, but I'm not just sitting in my room with a giant smile plastered on my face when I'm going about my business, my day to day. Working is actually something that gives me so much of that energy. It's like I have to cultivate that spark again. And working really does that, setting schedules and goals and holding myself accountable for that and working really hard towards that gives me a lot of the positive energy that I often give. And unfortunately, a lot of these pressers that I find in my life tend to expect somehow me to just constantly operate in this way. And it's not like that. It comes from hard work. It comes from persistence and fortitude. To be told that not smiling in these periods where I'm working and setting myself up for what people often gawk at me for or over idolize me for. I mean, that's difficult to even say. It feels gross coming out of my mouth. I appreciate people appreciating me for my art and the things that I take time to really hone and perfect. But there is a line that oft gets crossed and it dehumanizes me and honestly is just cruel. Anyhow, the story continues and gets quite dark here, so this is a trigger warning here. And the subject is rape. I was in Nantes and I was just having a day to myself where I was riding by the river and I'll spare kind of the difficult details and the real intense part, but what was so painful to me is that I had thought I had come so far in my ability and command of the language, and in fact, I won't take that from myself. I actually had come very far. This was quite blatantly this person trying to destabilize me, knowing that I was new 5 months into living in France, and their intention was achieved. There was no amount of saying no that was going to get this person to stop, and it unfortunately became a worn down kind of situation. I actually want to share with you a small poem. It is not very profound, but it is a very real, tangible, not to you, but to me, poem that I wrote after the incident. Wandering streets obliteratingly high, I came across a fish floating to the sky. I'm broken and beaten and wondering why France has up and won me in this life. And I literally wrote this in the streets of Nantes as I passed a giant fish sculpture and holding in all the tears. And at this point, I was again in a very unideal living situation, a couple who was still living together whilst broken up and hating each other. And upon my arrival, or a few days in, it was told to me that I was going to need another place to live anyways because of the circumstance. And I was just tired of uprooting. I mean, I weighed up my options because I was so determined and stubborn as usual to stay in France, but woofing is usually like a week or two at a time. I didn't have any incoming finances, and yeah, it just didn't seem sustainable. And that's when I realized I should try to move back to the UK, where I at least have a command of the language 100%. It was a big financial hit, and to me, definitely felt like a big defeat. But my health was at risk, and I knew that I just needed somewhere a bit long term for sure to rest so I could keep moving forward. I came up with a plan to stay with my ex spouse in Plymouth and keep studying the language for the summer so that way I could study coiffure, which is hairstyling. I would take that time to really get prolific in the language, and that way I would be able to kind of overcome this difficulty with the bureaucracy. So basically, I would find the alternance program, which is where you work half the week and you study half the week, but I would still need help and assistance from the government. So that was going to take a lot of brainstorming, a lot of research, and basically, I knew if I committed myself to it, I would be able to finish this through the summer. Let me just say a quick thing about homelessness. It is a constant hustle. You have to be creative. You have to think quick and on your feet every day. How am I going to get myself out of this position? What is the next best thing? And that is one of the reasons I devised this plan for studying coiffure. I needed a way to secure an autonomous life for myself in France. I arrived back in Plymouth on the 31st of March, which is the birthday of my father, whom I am estranged from. And ironically, signs are so funny in this way. I think at the time I saw it as a good sign, and now in post I can see it as quite a bad sign. Signs, eh? They aren't meant for reading. And that's going to be on my next album. I was in Plymouth for about a month, and it was surreal. It was quite like visiting my dead body. Like my spirit was free, but here I was just dead in my coffin. And for some reason, I buried my horrible dead crap with me. I was such a different person when I lived in Plymouth the first time around. I'm quite good at evolving. It's one of my favorite things I get to do in this lifetime. Constantly growing and changing and surprising myself. It was challenging being this more precious, valuable version of myself in this environment where just so much had remained the same, and unfortunately the same could be said for my spouse. My spouse came to find me at the skate park one day to tell me that I was toxic to live with. To me, this is pretty preposterous because I physically wasn't even there. At this point, I had built such a resilience. I mean, I can't say I wasn't hurt, but at the same time, I just was so used to putting everything in my couple of bags and scooting my booty along. I went up the road to see a couple of my very dear friends, to kind of have a safe space and just prepare myself for the move and be able to seek solace in them. And unfortunately, I do have to give you another trigger warning here, and this is for assault. As I was leaving their house, this is about 4 p.m., headed down a main road. A crazed man comes down the road, swerves with his car to try and hit me, and I jump out of the way and try to proceed route, try to keep crossing the street, and he continually keeps trying to reverse his car into me. I eventually get fed up and kick his car, and when he stops, I make my way across the street. He kind of got further physical with me, and luckily a group of people intervened. It's funny because when I tell this story, especially cis friends or disappearing friends are kind of like, what? How? Why? And well, it was obviously a hate crime, and I get to have the confidence in knowing that because when he was asked to stop, he was saying, well, he deserves it. He's a freak. As a lot of you know, I'm a serial panic attack survivor, but this had to be my worst, possibly in history. I walked myself the rest of the approximately 10 minutes home with my mask smacking me in the face, breathing in and out so much. I'm shocked I didn't swallow it whole. When I got back, I was on the bed writhing in pain and letting my body slowly exorcise the demons that this person transferred from them to my poor and aching body. I had just left who I considered to be kind of my remaining support network in Plymouth, as most of my very best friends have all kind of moved out of the Plymouth area. So I had asked my ex if he could grab his mom and bring her back. And I mean, okay, I do actually know how it got into this, but basically, of course, I'm kind of empathizing with the situation and, just saying this is a problem within the system. And then it becomes some sort of political debate as she's like hyper conservative. Let me make a public service announcement right now. I don't care what your beliefs are or if they're opposite to somebody. If somebody has just gone through a physical assault, this is not the time for contrary beliefs. You can speak about that any other time that is not directly after an assault. That was my horrible impression of a rewind. What I really wanted to bring up that I realized I had forgotten to mention is another point of serendipity. Actually, in fact, I had days before my ex told me they were going to throw me out, and before this attack, they had made some pretty homophobic and racist remarks. And I waited till the next day when they were sober to tell them that I was uncomfortable with this and that even if they don't plan on harming anyone, this kind of rhetoric, this narrative is what gets other people to act in an aggressive way and often gets people like myself killed. And I mean, I love a prove 'em right moment, but not this kind. From there, I was lucky to move in with a Cleveland semi-native, Cleveland expat, Kate Marsh. Shout out to her. Thank you for having me for the month. Former bartender at Funhouse. I spent that month really commuting lots, taking the train, which is a very beautiful way to get around. But even if it's a 10-minute train journey, taking the train from Bath to Bristol, commuting in as often as possible, and just really getting acquainted with the community here. Quickly became involved in the skate community, and now I work shifts at Bump Roller Disco. I work at Jam Jar, which is a live music venue. I will be starting at Bristol Beacon teaching music, which is a charity. So I'll be practicing a music practitioner there. I've had some rough spells. The last house I just came from was another living with the person who is in charge of the house, who owns the house. And it turned out really poorly. I mean, I really don't need to reiterate this pattern, but again, it was, a person expecting more out of me. And when they found out my housing that I was going for after living with them fell through a community group, they tried to throw me out sooner, and I had quite a big panic. See, I'm still very far from being fully immersed in this community. It's going to take a hell of a long time, and that's for many reasons. I mean, we're still in a pandemic, and it is a big city. People are solidified here, and when you are the new person, everybody has their friend groups, everybody has their things, and it takes a while to kind of worm your way in and say, hey, I want to be friends. I'm worthy of sharing experiences and spending time together. That paired with having to get all my equipment again, find all the things you would need and use in your house. Editing so hard. I gotta edit how many jobs I have. I have way too many, so hopefully the next couple months will be telling of what to do, what's to come. I am the least patient man I know, and this is why I love this journey. I hate it. I mean, I do genuinely hate it. Nobody likes being challenged at what they're bad at. Except for me, because I'm a masochist. No, I don't know. I know it's important. I know that when I can finally breathe so much easier, when I'm not scared half the time or stressed all the time, or, just constantly missing everyone I know and love. I'm just eager for this long journey to pay off, because I believe in me. I'm getting actually really emotional now, but I believe in me wholeheartedly. I try so hard, and my intentions, I try to keep them good, and I act as well as I can at any given moment, and I want to create. And I'm here in Bristol to create and to love myself, to make myself the most precious gem that is able to just radiate that, to others around me. I want to keep growing this community and hopefully be able to take it to other communities later in life. Like, this is not my last resting place, I don't think. Oh, I really get it. I know I love Que Sera, because whatever will be, will be. It's true, the future is not mine, and I don't care to know it. I say that all the time. I don't care to know it. I get hopeful. I want to prove France wrong. I want to do some very fun, exciting projects that maybe you'll see in time. I want to write about language, and I want to tear down capitalism fiercely. Like, I gotta be honest, the worst thing about ending my stint of homelessness is being back in society. There is something, well, there's a lot to be loved about living outside of a system, period. But overarchingly, it can bring you unbearable stress. And if you've seen the 1985 classic by Agnes Varda, Vagabond, you know ultimately that that lifestyle can quite easily lead to death. So it's here I'll stay now, and probably for quite some time. I do well love this big city Bristol, although everyone in Bristol will argue it's small. Well, Cleveland, you are massive in my heart, and I can't thank you enough for tuning in and keeping me here and in your hearts and in spirit. I hope you enjoy this EP. Love so much from your forever friend, Fern. And this is Fern Enley signing off, and I hope you enjoy Nakut.
I call you all the time, 'cause you're safer, you can call me anytime. And a safe word is I'm not doing fine. I'm afraid you'll burn and just keep by. I'm afraid you'll burn, but I'd rather die. I call you on the phone. My body's vacant, the lights on, but nobody's home. Yeah, my body's just a shell. I'm afraid you'll burn, it's gone through hell. I'm afraid you'll burn, so oh well. Sing to me, speak to me, coax me down from the tree I'm caught in. Oh, I was fueled here from my fears, and now I'm drenched in my own tears. My pulse beats leaping, but my heart is guarded. Folks say chin up, you'll be fine. But I've got this intolerable ache in my body and mind. Medicine just makes it worse. I'm afraid you'll burn, born to a curse. I'm afraid you'll burn, and fuck it hurts. Sing to me, speak to me, coax me down from the tree I'm caught in. Oh, I was fueled here from my fears, and now I'm drenched in my own tears. My pulse beats living, but my heart's retarded. I'm a puppet in a puppet show. I've got no control. I'm just moving. It is so insufferable. I can't cut the rope. I just leave it moving. Speak to me, coax me down from the tree I'm caught in. could you ever sing in my song? Would you ever, could you ever tap your toes along? Would you ever, could you ever use your devices? Tell me I'm dirt worth, I'm not priceless. Oh, I never set to be a diamond. I shudder to be so vain and lifeless. So I'll never be your fucking diamond. I am well within my will to iterate exactly how I feel. You'll criticize and say I'm ill, but I'm just fine. You keep chasing diamonds, but I'm more red than you'll find. Would you ever, could you ever ask to dance? Just to get a yes from me. Say I don't stand a chance. Would you ever, could you ever get me so flustered? Tell me that I'm pitiful and oh so lackluster. But all you want from me is entertainment. It gets me so angry I can't contain it. So I'll never be your entertainment. I am well within my will. I'll iterate exactly how I feel. You'll criticize and say I'm ill, but I'm just fine. You keep chasing diamonds, but I'm more red than you'll find. I'm well within my will. I'll iterate exactly how I feel. You criticize and say I'm ill, but I'm just fine. You keep chasing diamonds, but I'm more rare than you'll find. Falling like leaves from trees, I wasn't there when you fell for me. You weren't either, you just looked through me and told me the things that I couldn't see in me. In
just heard the brand new EP Necute from Fern Enley. You can listen to it in its entirety on Bandcamp at fernenley.bandcamp.com. That's spelled FERNENLEY.bandcamp.com. There are 3 songs. First we listened to Fragile, then we listened to Diamond, and then Torch. I am pronouncing them as their English names so that I don't completely butcher the pronunciation. This was released on September 1st of 2021. You can follow Fern on Facebook as well as Instagram. He is a Cleveland artist now living in Bristol over in the UK. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Fern for being able to record this very, very special story and presenting it in such an interesting way for us this evening. It's always a blessing to have such beautiful artists in my midst that they will just come up with the most lovely ways to present themselves and present their story, whether it be through music or even just this really creative spoken word kind of meditation on their lives thus far. So please let them know that you're thinking about them over on the other side of the world. It is 5 hours ahead there, so quite late this evening, and that's one of the reasons why we couldn't get Fern live on the show doing a virtual presentation, but really, really enjoyed the way that they interpreted this assignment sort of to be on the program tonight in their own special way. So thank you, Fern. Next week on Live from Cleveland, we are going to be hopefully back in the studio, crossing my fingers. But I know that we also do have some performances lined up through the rest of September and October. I'm going to do my best to post a little bit of a calendar online for you so you can see who we've got coming up. Stay tuned next week, same time, same place, here on WRUW from 10 to 11 p.m. This is Live from Cleveland. I'm Rachel H. Hope you have a great rest of your Thursday night.